Although many Namibians who fought for the country's liberation lost their lives in southern Angola, there could be another unknown element that is yet to be identified. The psychological effects of war on those who were at the front could be one of the major problems that prevented some soldiers from returning home 24 years after the end of the war. One such former planned combatant is John Mandume Mbwalala, who is now living destitute at Oliafilwa village in southern Angola. Mbwalala, who is now approaching retirement age, lives under a tree and seems to have become mentally disturbed. NBC's Tonateni Shidudu was in Angola last week and brings us this report.
According to the villagers, John Mandume Mbwalala came here in 1989, a few days after the incident of the 1st of April where many planned combatants were killed by South African colonial forces as they were returning home. Villagers say Mbwalala came here in a confused state of mind and was wearing a planned military uniform with 2 empty AK-47 submachine gun magazines. He was a young man by that time, but could neither really tell people about his past nor about his family in Namibia. He only said he's from this area. He then became a resident of this area and started sleeping under this tree. As years passed by, his uniform became worn out and Good Samaritans gave him some clothes and cooking utensils, and this became home. He, however, appeared annoyed by our visit and did not want to be asked many questions. But people say sometimes when he is in a good mood, he tells them that he was a planned combatant from Onamtai near Ongwediva and then refused to say more. Residents feel that this confirms that his native roots are in Namibia. Villagers say Mbwalala spent most of his time by himself and does not go to cooker shops or engaged in long conversations with others. Psychologists say soldiers bear the grief of the suffering and deaths of their fellow mates as well. Such situations have a depressing effect on them and deprive them of peace of mind. For 24 years, their former freedom fighter has slept here in the open, and the mystery surrounding his past and what led him to this village still remains.
Good evening and thank you for joining us for the news at 8 here on NBC. I am Hassan Engelbrecht along with sign language interpreter Nanda Shipahu. Leading this bulletin, the missing former planned combatant who was featured on NBC TV News at the beginning of this month has been identified as Halainge Yashilongo Shambwalala from the Omatunda village near Onamutai Yai in the Oshana region. Now, since the story was broadcast, the NBC has been inundated with calls from various families wanting to know more about the man believed to have been missing in combat since 1989 at the end of the Namibian armed liberation struggle. He is now mentally disturbed and leads a destitute life at a remote village in southern Angola. He was discovered by an NBC News crew during a trip to Vietnam, a former SWAPO military base in Angola, and identified himself as John Mandume Mbwalala from Onamutai. Now, the NBC's Tonateni Shidudu has since been trying to trace his family in Namibia, which he eventually found at a village outside Ongwediva.
The man was first spotted at Ojafilwa village shortly after the incident of the 1st of April 1989, where many assembling planned combatants were killed by South African troops. Local people say he came in a confused mental state, wearing a plain military uniform with 2 empty AK-47 submachine gun magazines. He has been living here for the past 24 years, surviving on handouts from the villagers. Victoria Haukongo and her mother Maria Pietres of Omatunda village near Onamtai, where the man is said to have come from, identified him from the still photos that were taken by the NBC. They say he went into exile in the mid-70s. Other family members who watched the news on that day also strongly believe the man is their own Halainge Yashilongo Mbwalala. They say they were told that Halainge was one of those who were killed on the 1st April 1989 and even held a mourning ceremony in his memory. Haukongo claims that the man is her elder half-brother from a different father.
When I look at the pictures, I'm strongly convinced it's him. It's just that he has gone through a lot of hardship and has become mentally disturbed. But I strongly believe he's Halainge, my brother.
Cucu Maria Pietres says although she believed that her son was truly dead, she could not wait to see him in person. They pleaded with the NBC crew to take them where the man lives in Angola.
We want to see him. If you can please just help take us where he lives. I want to go there myself.
They also showed us his baptism certificate issued by the Anglican pastor Theophilus Hamtumbangela at Onekwaya in 1967. However, for now, Victoria Haukongo and her mother Maria Pietres can only hope that the authorities will assist them by facilitating their son's repatriation back home.
Good evening and a very warm welcome to NBC News at 8. I'm Dominic Mashikele, along with sign language interpreter Benofina Aces. We start in the nation's capital, where the government has promised to facilitate the repatriation of the former planned combatant who has been missing in action since 1989 and now leads a destitute life in Angola. The Information and Communication Technology Minister, Joel Kapanda, says he was shocked to learn about the plight of Mandume Mbwalala, who has been living in squalid conditions 24 years after the end of the Namibian armed liberation struggle. Minister Kapanda says the government is taking the case very seriously and has already engaged its Angolan counterpart and other relevant authorities to ensure that the former freedom fighter is repatriated home to be reunited with his family.
24 years after the end of the armed liberation struggle, for this combatant, the struggle seems to be coming to an end only now. Information and Communication Technology Minister, who is also the government spokesperson Joel Kapanda, says government was touched by the discovery of the former combatant and is highly concerned about his health. He commends the NBC for highlighting the plight of the man who had sacrificed the best part of his life and energy for the independence, whose fruits he has not yet tasted due to the psychological effects of the war.
We are very sorry about this state of affairs. We did not know that somebody still living in such a condition after the independence of the country. The government is serious in taking this matter because this is a former combatant of SWAPO. We valued the role that was played by a SWAPO combatant.
Although Kapanda could not confirm when government is to send a team to Angola, he assured the family and the nation that it was taking the matter very seriously because it values the role that was played by all SWAPO combatants in the fight against the enemy for national liberation. He says the repatriation might be a challenging undertaking as the man has become mentally disturbed, but modalities will be worked out that would include interventions of the psychologists.
The war we were fighting was a very serious war. Enemy used all kinds of weapons in order to subdue, SWAPO fighters. And, in amidst all this, situation, one can be psychologically affected. And as a result, might just even go astray, not knowing where he was going, and end up in a situation like this.
The NBC has traced Mbwalala's family in Namibia and found his mother Maria Pietres at Omatunda village in the Ndola constituency, who told us that she had been told that her son had died in the ambush of the 1st of April 1989. The case of Mbwalala is probably the first of its kind 24 years after the end of the war. But similar cases have been reported in countries such as Japan, where a soldier was found in the jungle in the Philippines, still fighting 29 years after the end of the Second World War. Tonateni Shidudu, NBC News, Windhoek.
We'll bring you more on the political party campaigns for the Grootfontein by-election later in the bulletin. The family of the discovered former planned combatant Halenge Mandume Mbwalala has called on the government to speed up the process of repatriating him. After identifying him from NBC News footage, they traveled to Angola last Saturday to see him in person, and upon seeing him, they were strongly convinced that it is their brother who was reported dead in 1989. Mbwalala, however, appeared to have no recollection of his siblings and was avoiding questions about his family background, saying it has been many years since he saw them. Bato Masati Police Regional Commander, who accompanied the family to Angola, Shinedima Shindinge, says that is typical behavior of a soldier.
Calm and collected, Halainge Mandume Mbwalala welcomed us at his place. He shook hands with his elder brother Mateus and young sister Victoria, but says he does not know them as so much time has passed. Mbwalala is said to have left the country as a young man in the mid-70s. His siblings were also young by that time, and it's quite possible that he cannot remember them. His elder brother Mateus is convinced this is his biological brother. I am so sure this is Halainge, my brother. As a test of his memory, we showed him a picture of the founding president, who was commander-in-chief of PLAN then. At first, Mbwalala told us he doesn't recognize the portrait of the founding father. We hinted if he really does not know Sam. He looked at the picture again, smiling, and gave a full name saying, "That is not how Sam Nujoma looks like."
Yeah, that was a type of training during the guerrilla war. You see, you don't need to answer if you don't know whom you are talking to.
Commissioner Shindinge says this is the fifth family he is bringing here to identify him after the case was reported to him by the local village headman some times ago.
Today, I think his behavior there's a change. Not like in some other cases as it used to be. I believe today, even myself, I'm convinced that people whom we brought here today are those that are blood related.
Mbwalala even agreed to post pictures with the family, something that he would usually never agree to.
A peaceful request to the government to speed up the process for my uncle to be repatriated, to come home, meet the family, meet the friend, and enjoy the fruit that the other Namibians are enjoying.
We also met Mekulu Selma Shikunda, who has seen Mbwalala in his PLAN uniform in the early 90s. There are many questions that still need to be answered to establish whether or not Mbwalala was indeed a freedom fighter. But those who were with us here are highly convinced that he was. The family could not wait for the happy ending. Tonateni Shidudu, NBC News, Ojafilwa Village, Kunene Province, Angola.